A lot of people have declared the Cincinnati Bengals to be off-season winners after they added Lyle Collins to play right tackle for them, Alex Kappa to play right guard, and Ted Karras to play center. Now, are these additions good enough to transform what was a SAR unit into one of the best in football, or is this going to be a pretty average mid-offensive line that still needs a lot of work? Well, I looked at all three additions and profiled them a little bit so you know what to expect from this team next year and these three players individually. The first Bengals addition that I want to talk about is the right tackle, Lyle Collins. Maybe the biggest get from their free agency haul, and with any player, you're going to notice good, you're going to notice bad. I noticed both with Lyle Collins, obviously. So, Bengals fans, I ask you, do you want the good or the bad news first? You won't be able to answer that question because I am by myself recording this, so we're just going to spin the wheel to see. Alright, the wheel is spoken, so let's get into the good stuff about Lyle Collins first. So the good news is that Lyle Collins is a real football player. He's not a total liability. He is a starting caliber right tackle in this league. I started off by watching the Buccaneers game because I thought probably the best front seven that he played in the regular season, first game of the year. It was a mixed bag for sure, but there was definitely some good stuff in here. Right here, he's number 71. He's going to hold number 93 for a quick moment before going out on the screen, and you can see that he's a decent athlete in space, right? Moving well out there, tracking down this linebacker, meeting him with some power, turning him out right there, and clearing space for this screen, and a really decent chunk of yardage here. The first and most basic aspect of playing offensive line is just, can you get out of your stance efficiently? And Lyle Collins can definitely do that. He's light on his feet. He's a good athlete. I didn't notice a huge problem with him over or under setting. He's always sliding to square up his opponent and approaching them at a good angle and being able to get out there quickly and efficiently, like I said. And then this is Shaquille Barrett, a good pass rusher who's going to try to go right through him, bull rush, but he does a nice job. Good play strength. Gets his hands under the pads of Barrett and just kind of lifts him up. And when Barrett's trying to drive his feet and work through Lyle Collins here, you see him just kind of bouncing around, staying light on his feet, not getting tangled up, just resetting his anchor with each little hop, and Shaquille Barrett's not getting anywhere close to threatening Dak Prescott here. Here's another good play from Collins versus Barrett, and what's really good about this one is that it's a good play from Barrett as well, in my opinion. It's a play that as an edge rusher, you've got to say, my process was good, and this would beat most of the right tackles in the league, but it didn't beat this guy because he just played it so well. And what Barrett is going to do is a Euro step and then convert speed to power and just try to bull rush right through Collins' frame. And he gets stonewalled. And the reason why I think this is such a good play from Barrett is he's generating a lot of power off that fourth step, and his pad level is good. He is staying low right into the frame of Collins and pushing upwards, and it literally pretty much lifts Collins out of the air for a second there. And it's hard to land, maintain your balance with Barrett continuing to try to work through you, but Collins does a good job here. And once he hits the ground, he gets a wide base and is able to remain upright and just handle it. I'm going to fast forward from the first game of the season to the last against the San Francisco 49ers, who also have a pretty good front seven, especially when you're going up against this guy, Nick Bosa. And Collins was going up against Bosa for the majority of the first half here. They had a lot of reps on each other, and Collins, I think, won that matchup. And how did he do it? Well, a lot of it had to do with the bait technique, which is when he's going to shoot his arms and then draw them back. And at this point, he's almost daring, with his arms down, Nick Bosa just go right through him into his exposed chest here. And Bosa takes him up on that. He says, okay, that's what I'm going to do. He gets really low, as edge rushers do, going right into the chest, trying to knock him backwards. And that's exactly what Collins wants him to do, because once he's in that position and once he's low, it's tough for him to stay balanced without Collins. So Collins is able to kind of push him down here and knock Bosa to the ground after kind of inviting him to lean forward as much as possible and uses Bosa's leverage against him. It's a similar deal here, all right? The first thing I like about this play is he shoots his hands one at a time. Left hand, right hand. And the reason I like him doing that one at a time instead of both together is I think it's easier to lunge when you do it with both hands, and it's easier for a defender to swipe them both away at one time if you do both hands at one time. So 1, 2, good placement here, the insides of the shoulder pads, and Bosa doesn't like that, and he's basically going to try to bench press Collins or just throw him off. And when he does that, Collins knows that he's in a vulnerable position, leaning pretty far forward, off balance, and he just kind of Donkey Kong ground punches Bosa and is able to hit him right in the forearms and, again, use his leverage to his disadvantage and knock Bosa to the ground. And then again, you're going to see him as an athlete in space here. After he pulls, he's got to go track down that defensive back and knock him over. He's able to do that. He's able to locate Fred Warner and knock him down as well and make him overshoot Zeke. And that gives Zeke just enough room to pick up this first down in a short yardage situation. So you can trust that he is a sufficient enough athlete that he won't just be a tackling dummy out there like we've seen the Bengals put forward on their offensive line for a bit now. He's not just going to be someone that just gets thrown around anytime that the Bengals go up against a half-decent pass rusher. He's going to be able to hold his own. He has good play strength, and he's able to make plays in space as well and execute screens and execute pulling. And just being that is half the battle for an offensive tackle, especially when you're a team who's had such bad offensive line play. Is like, just get me someone who isn't going to be a liability, and Collins is certainly not that. On top of that, you do see the mental side come out as well sometimes, and the understanding of what defenses are going to do to him, what edge rushers are going to do to him, and him quickly diagnosing that and breaking out the counter moves needed to stop it. However, there are some flaws. This is the last time Collins and Bosa matched up in this game because Bosa got hurt, but it highlights Collins' biggest flaw, and that is that he is sloppy with his technique and his hand placement. Like right here, he shoots both hands at the same time this time and just misses Bosa's frame pretty much. Here, his right hand is in Bosa's face mask, which could be a penalty, and his left hand is also basically above Bosa's shoulder and up at his ear hole on his helmet. And what that does is you're basically not getting any of Bosa here, and his hands just slide right off his helmet. And this is not an athletic position for a tackle to be in. His arm up in the air, 1 foot on the ground. You're just all mismanaged and mismatched. And Bosa's going to take advantage of you every time in this situation. He's going to take advantage of the fact that you're off balance and you don't have any hands on him. And Bosa just cuts this inside and takes a beeline directly towards Dak Prescott. And to prevent a sack, Collins basically has to put him in a headlock and tackle him, which draws a penalty from the ref, obviously, because that's holding. And I guess luckily for Collins, Bosa hits his head right on the hip of his teammate, and it knocks him out with a concussion, and he doesn't have to see Bosa for the rest of this game, so he can't really know if he would have done a good job for the entirety of the whole thing. The place where you want your hands to be at is right in the armpits of your opponents. That's how you best drive them around. That's how you best control them. But too often, Lyle Collins will have his hands on the hips of the edge rusher, on their helmet, above their head, on the back of their nameplate, and it's just not a good athletic position to be in, and good edge rushers will take advantage of that, and they will get pressure every single time, or maybe not every single time, but it's just not a good process. And he's been in the league 5-6 years now, and he's still doing this, and it prevents me from calling him like a really elite or above average offensive tackle. The other downside with Lyle Collins is he might be kind of a dumbass, considering that he got suspended for 5 games this season trying to bribe the NFL drug test collector and just not taking the tests, even though you can't even get suspended for weed anymore. So I don't know what that's about. But you may be wondering, why didn't the Cowboys re-sign him? Why did they just let him walk if he's a half-decent offensive lineman? Those are hard to find. And the answer is, well, I know that at my job, if I tried to bribe a drug test collector, I would probably get fired, and there would definitely be a lack of trust between me and the organization. So it doesn't necessarily surprise me that the Cowboys weren't willing to fork over tens of millions of dollars to a dude like this, because it's difficult to trust them. It's difficult to rely on someone like that. But overall, if you look at the player he is and you look at the contract the Bengals gave him, it's pretty fair, right? The 10th highest paid right tackle in football. His cap number is never above $10 million. It's always in the 7 digits instead of the 8 digits, never above 4% of the cap overall. It's hard to say this is a bad contract for anybody involved. Lyle Collins is not someone you expect to put one-on-one against maybe the best in football and have him just dominate, but he's also someone that you can put one-on-one against the best in football and think you've got a fighting chance, which I don't think you could say about the right side of the Bengals offensive line before. So overall, I would say this is a W. Now let's talk a little bit about Ted Karras, the guard they signed. He came over from New England. He's played some center in his career. He played center in Miami, and it looks like he might play center for the Bengals, replacing Trey Hopkins. And here's what Bill Belichick had to say about him. Ted was pretty consistent for us and still is. I think that's one of the great things about Ted Karras. Goes on to say, you basically get the same person every day, every play. It's not always perfect, but it's consistent. He's going to give his absolute best, and he's really good with communication and making sure everybody is on the same page, which is very important, especially if you're playing center. So these are things that you can't really see on game film, but he's a good presence on an offensive line and a good leader. I guess this does show up on film a little bit when he is dealing with stunts. He usually is pretty good at identifying those and picking them up. I also think he plays pretty disciplined when it comes to like hand placement. Like right here, you're going to see those arms snap upwards and attach right to the armpits of the defensive lineman, and that's what you want to do. That's how you control him, and it's also how you avoid penalties, and he's only been called for 1 holding in the last 2 years of starting. Here, the Colts are going to stunt, and it takes up the center and the tackle, and he's just kind of left in the middle. He doesn't have all that much to do on this play. Obviously, he's got to help pass him off, but he's not just content to stand around or conserve any energy or look for someone else. No, he's going to give 100% effort until the whistle blows, and he's going to book it over to the tackle and help pancake this guy. And he does that every play of every game, basically. That kind of effort. And all that is well and good, and he will have a long NFL career because of it, but it is pretty clear when you watch him that he is a low-caliber NFL athlete, and it is showing up every time that he has to make a block where he's asked to move laterally. Like this play, for example, they're running power, and he has to pull, and as soon as that happens, I was like, okay, this is not someone who is a high-level offensive lineman, just because it is clear that he just doesn't have the kind of explosiveness that would let you just bowl people over, or that you want to really be running behind. First of all, he runs into the center when he's backing up and kind of stumbles a little bit, clearly not moving very fast. And then at the point of attack, he's very hesitant, not going to bowl anybody over, trying to decide who to block in general, and the whole play just gets stood up right then and there. New England is pretty heavy on the like power gap runs, so I watched him pull a lot, and it was pretty rare that I actually saw him make any good contact with anybody. Here you're going to see more pulling. This time it's going to be play action power, so he's still going to work his way across the formation with the running back following him, but Mac Jones is going to keep the ball and throw it, and he's got to reach Gregory Rousseau here across the line of scrimmage, and he's the guy to do it. Ball gets snapped, he's booking his way over there, and Rousseau can just get upfield and step around him. I think he should have just kept running basically full speed. You see him kind of ease up and try to shuffle and slide in front of Rousseau, and he just doesn't quite have the foot speed to do it. I think you got to keep just booking it full sprint over there and try to make some sort of diving contact with his hip and give Mac Jones just a half a second, because Rousseau's a really, really tall dude and is going to get his hands in the face of the throw, and he bats this away. But again, just doesn't have the kind of athleticism you'd like to see and the speed you'd like to see to execute these blocks on the run. And then one more example of this, again, he's the left guard. He's going to try to go reach Milano here, try to round that corner and get him, but turns like a ship. Not very explosive here, has to slow up, and eventually he's going to get put on his ass by a defensive back, you know? Not good. He also has short arms, and that's a problem because defensive ends like this huge one, DeForest Buckner here, are able to get into his frame and extend and push him into the backfield a little bit. And he can usually recover from these, and it doesn't just take him out of the play completely. But the fact that he's in the backfield or not pushing them forward to initially begin means that the holes will often get clogged up, and the running back will like on this play, for example, not have very many places to go because he'll just be right in their face. So he doesn't necessarily lose, and his guy doesn't necessarily make the play here, but it's still, in my opinion, a bad rep versus the run just because he's not creating any kind of opening or gap. Here he is playing center in Miami, and you can see how those short arms really are a detriment, especially in the running game when defensive tackles can just kind of sit there like this with their arm extended and he can't get into their frame, and they don't really have to shoot up the field or do anything else besides just sit here like this, and when that running back goes into their gap, They just disconnect easily, and they're able to wrap up and make the tackle. It happens again here when number 93 is able to cross his face and make a play in the opposite A-gap with little to no resistance from Karras, which is just something that can't happen if you're an elite center. So Karras is a capable player, don't get me wrong. He does a lot of the little things right, and as long as he's not being asked to do like hard blocks all the time, you should be okay with him, but he's also not someone you shouldn't be looking to upgrade from, because you do not feel comfortable with him one-on-one with any kind of high-level defensive lineman, in my opinion. Now, I feel like I have to mention that he will not be playing the same type of system in Cincinnati than he was in New England, because New England's very heavy on those gap runs where he has to pull and the running back follows him. Cincinnati is more zone running. Everybody takes a step in one direction and the running back picks a hole and then bursts through it. Now, I think that's honestly a worse scheme fit for Karras, because that is exclusively like lateral movement and blocking on the move and having to reach people. And again, I just don't think that he's a high enough caliber athlete to be good at that. And you saw him in Miami 2 years ago playing center. That was worse than when he was in New England last year. So I don't think that this was the greatest signing in the world. And it's not like it's some terrible deal. It's not like they massively overpaid and made him one of the highest paid guards in the league. He's 14th out of 110, though, and he's making not quite 3% of the cap overall. And for this contract, it's nothing terrible, but you really would like to feel a little bit better about the scheme fit and consider that center position totally fixed for this kind of money, and I am not quite sure that it is totally fixed. So it's not a disaster. Maybe he's an upgrade over Trey Hopkins, but definitely not as high on this contract and this player as I am on Lyle Collins, even though he may be more technically refined than Lyle Collins. Being an NFL caliber athlete matters a lot to me, and Collins is definitely that, and I'm just not sure that Karras is.
And then wrapping this up with Kappa, their third edition, I actually feel like he's just kind of an upgraded Ted Karras, because he's got similar flaws, which I'll highlight here. He's slow. When he's asked to make blocks at the second level, he just doesn't have the foot speed to reach defensive backs and linebackers, and oftentimes they'll just get a free shot at his guy. And then wrapping this up with Kappa, their third edition, I actually feel like he's just kind of an upgraded Ted Karras, because he's got similar flaws, which I'll highlight here. He's slow. When he's asked to make blocks at the second level, he just doesn't have the foot speed to reach defensive backs and linebackers, and oftentimes they'll just get a free shot at his guy.
And then wrapping this up, talking about Kappa, who's slated to stay at right guard. I actually think he's like an upgraded but similar version of Ted Karras. And the flaws are the same. They're both slow. You see him trying to climb at the second level here. He just doesn't have the foot speed to consistently reach these crafty, clever, fast defensive backs. And oftentimes he just won't make any kind of contact, and they'll have a free shot at his guy, at his running back. Here, he's going to be unimpeded and asked to block number 5. I believe that's Quan Alexander. And again, he just doesn't really have that kind of foot speed. And Quan is able to just run right by him, get in on the tackle. This is comparable to outside zone with an end around coming. And this is a lot of what the Bengals run. And he's got the head start, the leverage to beat Demario Davis to the spot here. He's unimpeded, no one's in his way, and he's just not fast enough to get there, and Demario Davis passes him untouched. However, although Kappa has short arms like Karras and maybe not great straight line speed, which limits him in the open field, he does have good lateral mobility and good upper body strength, and when a guy like Grady Jarrett is going to attack him, he doesn't have to get blown backwards a few feet before resetting and eventually winning. No, he can hold his own at the point of attack right away and clear Grady Jarrett out of the throwing lane and have him not threaten Tom Brady at all here. And you don't trust anybody against Aaron Donald one-on-one, but Kappa has had some good reps and even some good full games against Aaron Donald in his career against him. I also noticed that Kappa is very aware of what is going on around him. He's always scanning, looking for stunters, looking for danger, and he's very tough to trick or to throw something at him that he won't see coming. Watch him sniff out the stunt on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. I think he's pretty good at doing things like that. Full disclosure, my laptop just ran out of storage space, so I don't have any more clips on Kappa, but I will say this. I was also impressed by his hand placement right in the strike zone under the armpits where you can control the guy. He's got better play strength at the point of attack than Karras does. They're similar, but a lot of the times with Karras, you will see them both engage. The offensive lineman and the defensive lineman will both engage, and it'll take him a couple steps back before he can get control of the situation. Kappa doesn't really need to do that as much. When that engagement happens, he basically can either keep it at a standstill or even knock a guy forward a little bit to a degree that Karras can't. So he's definitely an improved Karras and someone who is getting paid like an improved Karras, and I think they got fair value on that contract as well. However, there are still some big flaws with this offensive line that I can see. First of all, Jackson Carman is still a projected starter at left guard. And last year, their biggest problem was that right guard spot, which was a fight between Carman and Hakeem Adeniji. Both of them were liabilities, and you've still got one of them there as a projected starter. I don't know if I can consider this a really successful offseason for the Bengals while they still have their biggest issue starting on their offensive line. In an AFC where we've seen, even in their division, Watson get added, Lamar will be healthier, the entire AFC West could make the playoffs, not to mention the Dolphins now. So they're really fighting for their spot in the playoffs, and it's like, with all the improvements that got made, I can't have any liabilities on that offensive line, and Jackson Carman, he might be one. They also sacrificed scheme fit for pass blocking prowess. I think Karras is an all right pass blocker. I think that Kappa is an all right pass blocker. But really, guards and interior linemen of that tier of athleticism don't really fit their outside zone rushing scheme. So they sacrificed scheme fit in the running game for some pass blocking prowess. And I can't say that I blame them after how much Joe Burrow got hit last year, but it is something to kind of look out for, that I don't think that their rushing attack will have these wide open holes for Joe Mixon to run through like some Bengals fans expect. I think that it could be pretty rough actually next year. I think they could be maybe even a below average run blocking unit overall. So ultimately, to answer the question, is their offensive line good now? It's fine. It's probably near the middle of the pack, I would say. But it's not this top 12 unit. It's not this high level top third of the league type of unit yet, in my opinion. And there's still the draft. If they were to add Zion Johnson, maybe I would feel differently. If Jackson Carman was out of there and Kenyon Green was in, I would feel differently. There's still some moves they can make. But I was hoping they might trade for Laramie Tunsil. I was hoping that they might go after Teron Armstead or a real big difference maker there, and they didn't really get it. So I think there's still work to be done on that offensive line, although they are moving in the right direction, and some better fits in the interior of the offensive line could make it a really solid unit. So those are my takes. Thank you all for watching. This is a longer video. I will be back next week with another All-22 breakdown of something else. As always, thank you so much for watching, and see you then.